Okay, so I would like to tell you guys a story that happened maybe about 15 years ago. And it just goes to show that you never know. We have this whole thing that, things happen to us, coincidence. We all know there's no such thing as a coincidence. In fact, the word coincidence is coincidence. Ka is Hashem's name. You don't pronounce the yud. And incidence, that means Hashem orchestrates everything. And what appears to us humans as coincidence is actually not a coincidence at all. So here's something, a 1 in a million shot, which happened to me. All the stories I'm going to say in these series of stories are first-hand stories. They happened to me. They're not hearsay. It's not something that I read. They actually happened to me. So here goes one. Several years ago, my daughter calls me up, Chayala, and she says, "Daddy, I was living in Staten Island at the time, can you please see if the grocery stores over there have what's called rice with vermicelli?" Now, many of you may know this dish, many don't, so I'll just tell you what it is. It's actually exactly what the name of the product is. It's rice with small pieces of pasta, vermicelli, and it's a delicious dish. Many people serve it on Shabbos, Friday night, and her store in the Edison area where she lived didn't have any, so she called me if Staten Island had any. So what doesn't a father do for a child? Jump into my car, I run out to one grocery store after another, and none of them have it. I couldn't believe it. So I called some stores in Borough Park, and none of them had it. Couldn't understand it. But I didn't give up. The Gemara Megillah says you got to mitzvah. If you toil, if you put your due diligence in, you will find it. So I went on the internet. As I tell everybody, I'm a Google ador, and I typed in rice with vermicelli, and sure enough, it came up a few listings of companies that sell it. So I called the first one. It had an 800 number, and I dialed the number. When it rang, a child voice picks up and says, "Hello." So I immediately thought that I misdialed. So I hung up and I tried the number again. This time, same kid picks up. "Hello." I go, "Is your daddy or mommy there?" So he goes, "My daddy's home." I said, "Can I speak to him?" So father gets on the phone and says, "Can I help you?" I said, "Is this," I don't remember the exact name of the company, let's call it the ABC Food Company. "Is this the ABC Food Company?" And he says, "Yes, how can I help you?" I said, "Do you have rice with vermicelli?" He says, "Yeah." I go, "Okay, I'd like to order a couple of cases." He says, "No problem." I go, "But before I order, I just want to ask you something. You have a company with an 800 number, and you have a little child picking up the phone. I mean, nobody's going to take you serious. I in fact, hung up the first time I called. Why would you have a child pick up a phone?" So he tells me, not knowing who he's speaking to, and I, of course, don't know who I'm speaking to. I don't know if he's Jewish or he doesn't know that I'm Jewish. So he explains to me, "Let me tell you something, sir. Maybe you're not familiar with this term," and tells me, "You see, I am in what's called a kollel." A kollel is where Orthodox Jews, even after they get married, they stay in their school, in their yeshiva, and they learn and subsidized. And on the side, I run this little food business from my house. I can't afford to pay any help. So if I'm middle of studying, my somebody in my family picks up the phone. So he goes, so I don't know if you ever heard of something like that. I said, which kollel are you in? So he goes, well, I'm actually in a kollel in the Telz Yeshiva in Cleveland, Ohio. I go, let me tell you something. Not only don't I know what a kollel is, but in fact, I myself went to the Telz Yeshiva. I'm a frum guy, and I'm very familiar with that. Kol hakovod. Kudos to you that you're doing this. Anyway, I continue and I put in my order. And then I ask him another question. Do you mind telling me your name? I just wanted to know who I was speaking to. I figured maybe I'd know a guy that went to the kollel at the same time he did, and Jewish geography. So he says, my name is, I actually don't feel comfortable saying his name, but let's say his name is Rybaski. So I go, let me ask you something, Mr. Rybaski. Is that child that picked up the phone, is he your son? He goes, yes, he's actually my oldest son. And what is his name? And he's a little hesitant to tell me, why am I asking that? He finally tells me his son's name is Akiva. So I said to him, let me ask you something. Is your son's name Tzvi? He goes, yes. And he's puzzled, like, how would I know that? And I asked him another question. Was he named after your father? And he goes, yes. And now he's really puzzled, like how I would know that. And then I asked him a final question. I said, was he the first baby named after your father? And he goes, well, yes and no. It's the first one in the family, but actually my father was a teacher and a principal in a school. He had a student, and that student was a favorite of my father's, and my father was a favorite of that student. And almost a year or two after my father passed away, we heard, we could never verify it, but we heard that that student had a baby boy, and she named her son Tzvi, after my father. And that's when I tell him, you are now going to actually know that this story is true, because that boy that was named after your father is actually my son. And he went crazy on the phone. And he goes, what are you talking about? I go, well, my wife was that student of your father, and when we had this little boy, she says to me, Mendy, I want to name Akiva Tzvi, and I knew Akiva was a favorite name of hers because she liked Rabbi Akiva from the Tana in the Gemara, Rabbi Akiva, but I also want to name him Tzvi because I had this great teacher who passed away recently, and I want to give that name as well. So of course I agreed. And when he heard that, he went crazy. He says, can't imagine, I can't wait to tell my whole family that we finally know this story to be true, and we actually met the parent of this little boy. And Mendy, let me tell you something. If you think I'm going to charge you for this order, you're mistaken. But I told him, let me tell you something. If you think that I'm going to allow you to send me this order for free, you have another thing coming to you. This is your business, and I'm going to pay for it. And I'm so happy that I got a chance to talk to you and to tell you that my son is named after your father. And we continued talking on the phone, and it was really very heartwarming for both of us. So here goes to show how a random number that I dialed from the internet connected two people who have so much in common, that my son is named after that person's father. Hashem really has a way of bringing people together. Thank you for listening to this.